Hey everyone, so I have been absolutely overwhelmed by so many messages of support and interesting commentary after I posted the video Derbyshire Gestapo about the incident which happened to me last Tuesday night. And it was absolutely wonderful to receive a message out of the blue from allegedly Dave Murphy. So I suggested actually that Dave and I have a chat. So he's very kindly agreed to come on the call. He's one of the most respected individuals in the truth community. I'm reading this from some information I got. And he's an expert, amongst many other things, in law and our lawful rights. And this is one of the things, Dave, that is really important to me as a truth speaker. Shit happens, these incidents happen, and it's like we have to walk through the fire of them. But the key thing for me is that every single time I have any interaction, whether it's a speeding ticket, or I'm challenging everything. And every time an incident happens, I learn so much about our lawful rights. And I'm almost flabbergasted about how much the system manages to get away with in the guise of legislation, rules and regulations, which actually is completely unlawful. So I'd love you to start. Maybe let's just start by you talking a bit about you and what was your awakening and realization that there was something very wrong with the system? How did you kind of get into this whole area?
Okay, so I was living in America back in 2001. So I was living in New York or New Jersey, working in New York. So I was at 9/11 when it happened.
Wow.
So I watched it from across the water, and it really, I mean, yes, I watched it and went back to work the next day. Life went on, but it wasn't until about 2003 when I was helping my daughter with physics homework that I figured out that there was something wrong with it, and that kind of launched me into, well, first of all, looking into who was behind it, and that led me to a group called the neocon. And so from the New World Order, I started looking at the monetary system, and then the legal system, and then the healthcare system, and so on and so on and so on. And you know, when you sort of go through your life, you don't see there's anything wrong. You know, everything looks like, you know, it's all right and honest and true. It's like Disneyland. Everything looks proper and right and good until you start scratching the surface. And then you find that it's not what you think it is at all. And it's usually the opposite of what you think it is.
Yeah.
And that's what I was finding. And so I've been on this journey for about, 20 odd years, looking at all these different aspects of our life.
Okay, great. So let's just go through some of these fundamental basics, because we had a bit of an exchange on Telegram, private message exchange about some of the basics. And I want to really go into some of the basics around what I experienced. So, and imagining that the viewers of this video know nothing. So it's kind of like the ABC guide, because this is the thing, is like, I know a lot of people in the truth movement are pretty on the ball when it comes to common law and equity law and all of this stuff. But let's explain it for people who maybe are completely bought into the system. So first of all, tell us, what is the difference between lawful and legal?
We have been trained to interact with something called the legal system. Mm-hmm. And that's completely different to law. So law is essentially common law. It's literally what's already written on your heart, right? Which is essentially, don't cause harm, injury, or loss to people or their property. Don't defraud anybody, so don't lie, right? And do everything you'll say you'll do, and don't threaten anybody. It's as simple as that. We all know it. It's all written here. Yeah. So essentially, common law basically says you can do anything you like as long as you don't cause harm, injury, or loss. Mm-hmm. Fair enough. But then what they've actually done, this system has done, is papered over the law with this thin veneer of something called a legal system. The legal system is essentially legislation, statutes and acts, written by, fat old men in Whitehall. And essentially what they're saying is you're not allowed to do anything unless we allow you to do it. We permit you or license you to do it. Right. So one's expansive and the other one's restrictive. Yeah. So, legal, right? You're literally, if you're breaking one of these statutes, right, then you've done something illegal. Lawful is, as I said, anything you can do anything you like as long as you don't cause harm, injury, or loss. Yeah. So legal only applies to members or officers of the government, agents of the government, corporate officers, and more importantly, anybody who agrees to it. So
it needs consent.
It needs consent.
Yeah.
So now a lot of people think, oh, well, you've given your consent because you've voted for one of their politicians, and the politicians make the legislation, so you've kind of already consented to it. No, that's not true. You're going to be asked for your consent as and when, but they're not going to actually do it sort of openly. They're going to trick you into consenting. Yeah. So a lot of people already know that the word understand isn't English, it's legalese, it's a foreign language. So when like a policeman says, oh, I'm going to charge you with doing 50 and a 30, do you understand? He's not asking if you comprehend the words coming out of his mouth. He's asking you, do you consent to these charges and stand under my authority?
Right, yeah.
So tricking you.
Talk to us about castle doctrine, because this is something I mentioned when I did the video. I did a commentary on it, and it's a very fascinating aspect of common law, which and that's what you actually kind of wrote to me about, because I'd mentioned castle doctrine. So talk to us about castle doctrine.
Well, castle doctrine came about through the phrase, well-known phrase, an Englishman's home is his castle. Right. So essentially, this is enshrined in common law. It basically says that not even the king can come into your house if you don't want them to. Yeah. Your house is your castle. It's your refuge. It's your sanctuary. Right. Nobody has the right to come in if you don't want them to. Right. So it's essentially you have the common law right to remove anybody who you don't want to be there. Right. Using reasonable force up to and including deadly force, because the act of somebody trying to get into your castle, right, is an act of war. It literally is an act of war.
Yes.
Right, and so you have the right to go to war with those people, and if somebody were to die in that exchange, then c'est la guerre. Yeah. It's war, right? And it's no good just quoting, I'm invoking castle doctrine, right? You have to live it. You have to be ready to back it up. This was 1500 years ago, and the Vikings were out, out the front door, right, trying to break in, right, knowing that they're going to try and rape you and steal all your stuff. It's no good just saying, oh, we're invoking castle doctrine, right? You've got to be ready to fight to the death to protect your property, yourself, and your loved ones.
Okay, so this kind of brings us then, Dave, on to the case of Regina versus Robert Bob White. Now, you encouraged me to have a look at that, and I actually there was quite a good interview with him by the Michael O'Byrne, and that's kind of what happened with him. Is that, and I'll summarise it, and then you can kind of comment on it. That basically the bailiffs and police arrived to repossess his home, and he kind of, as I understand it, locked himself in, and the police then kicked in his door, a panel in his door, a bit like they did to me, like tried to break in. And as I understand it, a policeman went through the hole, and he had a club or something that he'd picked up, and he was going to go and hit, or to try to hit, or was going to go and hit this guy. Now what they then did is came out of the hole and shot him with a taser, tasered him, and then both of them went in and wrestled him down, hit his head, he had blood coming down, arrested him for a fray and tried to charge him, and he took it all the way. I think he defended himself. He was acquitted, like within 45 minutes. The jury, it was thrown out, basically acquitted by the jury, and he got a huge chunk of compensation. But it took him a lot to stand in that and stand up to them. So talk us through that, because this is the thing. So if on my situation, as they were starting to smash in my door, it's funny because someone actually did give me a pickaxe handle many years ago and said, keep this by your door, you might need it. It's a very handy thing. It's 4 foot long and you can always jab someone, or you can hit them around the head with it. And I was just laughing. I'm like, I'm never going to need that. And it didn't even occur to me. But imagine if I'd picked up that pickaxe handle and I had, jabbed it at this guy. I mean, I can't imagine myself doing that, but I can imagine that they would have tasered me, or it would have been really serious. Like, I mean, I can't imagine getting away with that, shall we say, in terms of, I mean, talk to us a bit about this.
You wouldn't be getting away with it, because essentially, you've got the right to defend your home and your person. Yeah. So,
but I think they would have. I think they would have tasered me if I'd done that.
Possibly,
on the spot.
Possibly, because these are vindictive psychopaths. Yeah. But what I would have done, I would have had a notice of removal of implied right of access.
I had that on my gate. I did. Well,
invoking castle doctrine on it. Right.
Okay.
And remind them. Look, right. I'm invoking castle doctrine. This is my home. Yeah. If you try and break in, that's an act of war, and I'm going to use reasonable force to remove you. Including.
You would have given them a little bit of a prior warning.
Yes, and I was actually going to do or sell a line of baseball bats with reasonable force written on them. So, just like your pickaxe handle. Yeah. So yes, notify them first of what carry on. Then that's their issue. And yes, you might have got retaliation. Yeah. But when it comes down to it, because obviously they will try and charge you with assault, like just like they charge Robert White with assault. Yes. Right? But the court will be on your side, because in the Robert White case, I think the judge actually said it doesn't matter that the sergeant was a police officer. Right? Mr. White had every right to assault him, because the police officer was there as a trespasser, something like that. But essentially, that's it. He had no right to be there, and Robert White had every right to do anything to protect his home. Yeah.
Now, this is another interesting thing about the Robert White case, is that one of the things it hinged on, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that the fact that this was a civil matter that the police had interfered with. Now, tell us about the difference between civil and criminal, and the fact that if the police believe there's a criminal thing, so someone has caused harm, injury or loss, which was what I think that they believed that there was a drunk driver on the run in my house. So that there was a criminal on the loose. So this difference between civil and criminal, and does that give them the right to do what they did? Because I think that's how they justified it.
Right. So again, this goes back to legal and lawful. Yeah. So if you've committed a crime, right, which is harm, injury, or loss to a person, right, so there needs to be an injured party, right, then that's criminal. And in criminal cases, the police have the right to yes, they do have the right to go to break in, just as they have the right to break in if there's a health and safety issue. There's some justification for for breaking in to get a criminal. A civil matter is essentially a breach of a contract. They're the only two causes of action there are in this world. You've either committed a crime, harmed somebody, or you've breached a contract.
Yeah. So what is, that's the question then, what's the burden of evidence then? Because that was obviously, you just said that if a crime had been committed, so they believed that a crime had been committed, but what is the burden of evidence? Because as far as I'm aware, this was just an allegation. There was no evidence, there was no reasonable evidence that that was true, and it wasn't actually true because they breathalyzed, when they find it, they breathalyzed my guest and it was 0. So this is
again, I don't know this, I don't know the circumstances leading up to what happened to you. So it was a guest in your house who the police thought was a drunk driver, is that right?
Yes, yeah. So what had happened, I'll tell you what had happened, is that the neighbour over the road alleged that the guest in my house hit their car, which was parked on the road, and he was basically turning into my lane. They alleged that he hit their car. It was stationary. It wasn't involving anyone. It wasn't like it was a car crash. And then he pulled in and then parked his car and then came back into my house. So they must have alleged, and I don't know because I haven't seen the witness statement, that he was a drunk driver. And on what basis, I don't know. So the police acted on that to basically, and I think they tried to get it in under Section 17 of the Police and Criminal Evidence Act, which it's a very narrow sliver of legislation, which I wasn't aware of until post this, but I don't have a video of that initial exchange, but they did sort of, because I was asking for a warrant. Have you got a warrant? I need to speak to my solicitor, and they're like, oh no, we don't need one, and pace. So I think, they would have, if replay it back, they probably garbled something about pace, which I didn't know what pace was.
Hello, Rachel.
This guy has smashed our door.
You can't believe look at this. I need you to open the door.
What are you doing?
I need you to open the door. Otherwise we'll have to cause some further damage.
What are you doing? This is outrageous.
This guy got bullied.
Step back from the door, please.
What the hell are you doing? We do not consent to this.
Do not consent.
You do not have the right to do this.
You do not have the right to do this. You do not. We do not consent. We do not.
Look at this
consent.
guy.
This
Oh,
is
you're
terrifying.
fucked. You're screwed.
You are cooked, my friend.
This is terrifying.
Are you sure you want to do this, mate?
Are you sure?
Are you sure you want to do this?
Surely you need a warrant to do
We
this.
do not consent to you coming into our property.
Oh my God! I can't believe you're doing this.
Stand back away from the door, please.
Molly.
Stand back away from the door.
What's your badge number?
14317, you've already got it.
Molly,
Stand back from the
though.
door.
Is it Molly?
Stand back from the door.
Is it
We're
Molly?
videoing
Stand back
this.
from the door, please.
Is it
We are
Molly?
videoing
Stand back from
this.
the
What's
door.
your name?
Look at
Oh
this
my
guy.
God!
What's your name? What's your
Oh
name?
my God!
Yeah, Mum, it's alright. It's just a door, calm down.
Oh my God! What are you
Calm
doing?
down.
Look at this guy.
It's alright.
What is this guy doing? You're screwed.
Calm
What are you
down.
Oh, you're going viral, mate.
You're just doing it for the fun of it.
Oh
Fuck
my
me.
God! What are you doing?
This is
You're
insane.
going to cause so much damage.
This is insane.
What are you doing? What are you doing? Oh my God!
This is insane.
What the hell are you doing, mate? We do not consent to this.
Oh God!
Insane.
This is terrifying.
What the
This
fuck?
is terrifying.
What are you doing?
What the hell are you doing? Look at this guy. What have you done? You should. We do not give you consent to enter.
You
Oh,
are
we do.
absolutely
We do not give you
cooked.
consent to enter.
We do
You are
not
fine.
consent. We do not understand.
But and I was asking for a warrant, but they didn't have one. So this is the question, I guess, is like, how much evidence is needed to justify that? Because anyone could say, I think there's some paedophiles living over the road, go and, I think you need to go and charge in their house.
So this person was alleging criminal damage, right, to their car, and then they were saying that your guest basically hit their car, and they suspect he was drunk as well.
Yeah, essentially, I think that's what happened.
This is the police being heavy-handed, because there's no reason to do what they did, on an allegation, right? There needs to be some evidence of drink driving. Yeah, that's all. And to break into somebody's house, admittedly, damaging somebody's car is would come under criminal, because it's harm to somebody's property.
When would it be lawful for the police to break the door down? How much evidence would they need to have, I guess, is the question. Or would they need a warrant?
They need to have at least some evidence. Well, they would need some evidence, anything, any bit of evidence. As far as they're concerned, they don't even know if that car was hit that day or 2 weeks before or whatever. It's just an allegation, and to break somebody else, breaking somebody else's house on the suspicion that there might be somebody in there who might have done, caused or hit a car and might be drunk. There's no point in making a complaint to the police, because it's like complaining about the mafia to the mafia.
Right.
You're not going to go anywhere with that. The best thing to do is actually to prosecute the police, go after them, which sounds a bit daunting. And I've actually, I don't know if you can read that. Oh, it's backwards. But I found this book,
so I can read
Police,
it, okay.
Police Misconduct.
Right.
Yeah, police misconduct and legal remedies. Well, that'll give you some ideas. There's also, you could actually take out a commercial lien against them. So essentially, you'd write up a statement of truth about what happened to you, right, and put a monetary value to it, essentially, right. So for your loss, harm, injury, or loss. I think you suffered more than just broken windows.
Yeah.
There was stress, there was fear, and So I might suggest that you do a commercial lien, and once you've got the lien, matured. I don't know if you've ever heard of somebody called Guy Taylor.
No.
Well, Guy Taylor was one of the sort of top free men on the land back in the day. Mm-hmm. He's dead now, but he was one of the top men. What he did once was he got a commercial lien against his local council, and once he got the lien perfected and matured, he actually turned up at the council offices with a removals truck and started loading the truck up with council furniture. And the council called the police, and Guy showed them the lien, and the police went, "Oh, nothing to do with us," and walked away. So wow. The council basically had to shut their offices part way through the day to stop him taking furniture.
Wow!
Because once you've got a commercial lien, then you've now got a debt, and you're entitled to start taking goods to the value of.
Right. Okay. So this is another question now, Dave, because a lot of people have said go after the individuals, like prosecute the individual police constables, and then you're saying to go after the police. So do you what are the next steps? Obviously it could just go to a lawyer and get them to sort it out. But if I wanted to do this myself, would you sue the police, or would you sue the individuals, or can you do both?
Now, this is beyond my area, because I'm more about defending people against the system,
Right.
not really going after the system after the fact. But you could go after both. You could go after the individuals involved because of because what they did, but you can also go after the police themselves because they're obviously not training their officers properly, right?
Yeah.
So I'd go after both. Go after the chief constable, because the buck stops with the chief constable. So yeah, take them both on.
Yeah, yeah. You I know that you go around the country talking about common law and lawful rights. You said to me in a message, you said that you felt that the tide is turning. Tell me what you mean by that, because I'm always kind of, I kind of oscillate between despair and hope. That the system is going to, because this was one of the things that really shocked me, is when the guy came to eventually they sent, after I complained, they sent someone to board up the door, and that was the worrying thing, because he said, oh, this happens all the time. He said, this is my job. I go around boarding the doors up all the time. Please, like if that had been a solid door, they'd have cut it in half. I just, it's my job. And I was actually quite shocked that the level of, and it's the same actually with the whole bailiff situation, we might want to talk about bailiffs, that these people are systematically terrorising people, and there's an overreach, potentially an overreach of these powers which are terrifying people and these people are supposed to be public servants. So what this when you said the tide is turning, is that because there's a growing awareness?
Absolutely. Okay, so we've grown up with television, and television, one of the things television does is gives us a false reality, right? There's a reason why there's so many cop shows on TV, because
Yes.
they're showing us what they're trying to make us believe that the police can do, right? Police can't just break into your house like what just happened to you, but we've grown complacent over the decades, and allowed them to just get used to doing things they're not allowed to do, because we've taken our eye off the ball, right? Because a policeman is essentially just a normal man or woman, right, who's doing the job that we're supposed to be doing full time. Okay, the police have only got the powers of arrest that we ourselves have got, right? So they're just being paid to do what we're supposed to be doing ourselves. Okay,
Right.
they don't have any more power than you do, right? It's just that we've attributed power to them, and it's because of television and things like that to just made us believe that they can do what they like, essentially. There's a growing awareness, though, that what they're doing is wrong. And, you can blame the internet for that, that more and more videos of what the police are doing are surfacing, right? Which then makes people go, oh, can they do that? Let me look that up. Let's check. Yeah. So back in what it was about 2006 to about 2013 was the heyday of the free men on the land, and essentially that's what we were doing back then. It was like looking at the legislation that binds them, and these days what we're doing is using the legislation against them. So yes, they're confined by a strict set of guidelines, a strict set of rules and regulations, which they ignore, and we don't pull them up on it because we don't know. We haven't taken the time to find out.
Yeah.
So if they get away with it once, they'll just keep doing it, Yeah. So now there's a growing awareness that they're doing, they're not doing things right. And now there's more and more people actually taking the time to look at the legislation and say, well, hang on a minute. An example, you know how the police the police will take you to court without you knowing about it. And, you know, if you've got a speeding ticket and you've kind of left it for a while, you might get a letter that says, oh, you've been taken to court, you've been given a fine and 6 points.
Yeah.
If you haven't looked at the Magistrates Court Act 1980, right, you'll find, you know, if you haven't looked at it, you won't know that Section 14 says if there were proceedings without your knowledge, then they're null and void. But, you know, because they've got away with it once, everybody just accepts that's what they can do.
Yeah.
Right? And they just don't know that they can just, you know, invalidate it just by telling the court, essentially.
Yeah. Well, this is an interesting thing about Magistrates Court, isn't it? Is that it was originally invented as a kind of way to kind of fast track all of the cases so that they didn't have to go to a trial by jury, but you don't have to consent to a magistrate's court. And they've now created this thing called single justice procedure, which is an even faster, like rubber stamp, because I mean, I'm challenging, I was going to say fighting, but no, challenging. I'm challenging a speeding thing with West Mercia Police at the moment, and I did a freedom of information request. Like, how many of these are you issuing? And it's like over 100,000 a year notices of intended prosecution. That's a huge, I mean, multiply that up across 45 police forces. That's 5 million of these bits of paper being spat out by computers, where the magistrates just rubber stamp, rubber stamp, rubber stamp. I mean, if we all refused to consent to the magistrate's process, we could completely, the whole system would grind to a halt.
Indeed it would. But can I tell you how to deal with those speeding tickets?
Yes, please.
Right. So it's looking at what you know, what they're doing and applying just a bit of common sense. Right. So they're saying that maybe a couple of weeks ago, you know, you were at a certain place on a certain date at a certain time, right? And you committed some offence like speeding, right? So let me ask you, where were you 2 weeks ago on Friday at 5:45 and 30 seconds?
Not sure.
Well, you don't know, do you? Nobody knows exactly 5:45 and 30 seconds, right? So you can legitimately say, I have no record of being at that location on that date at that time. Do you have any evidence?
Mm-hmm.
And most people will look at the photocopied pictures of the car and say, well, they've got me. That's it. That's the evidence. The thing is, a photograph isn't evidence. A camera is not a witness. Okay.
Right.
If a camera was a witness, you could go to court and say, I call the camera. Yeah. I want to
Okay.
cross-examine the camera. Yeah. Which is obviously ridiculous. Right.
But then CCTV is evidence, isn't it?
No, it's not. It's not primary evidence. It can support a witness statement, right? But it's not primary evidence of its own, because your car, no matter what car it is, it came off of a production line, right? So there are, you know, maybe 50,000 identical cars to yours. The only difference is a number plate.
Yeah.
So how do you know that your car wasn't cloned? How do you know there wasn't a bit of bird shit on your number plate that made an F look like an E or a C look like a G, or any number of reasons why that might not be your car?
Right.
So again, you can say the photocopied images of the car you sent me bear a striking resemblance to my car, but do you have any evidence it's one and the same?
Mm-hmm.
Which they don't. Yeah. So essentially, they've got no evidence whatsoever that you were involved. So you do a conditional acceptance which is saying, I will happily accept your charges, right, or your offer to prosecute, on the condition that you give me this evidence that I was there, evidence that this picture is my car, right? And a couple of other things, right? Now they've got a fallback procedure, yeah. So obviously they need you to confess to speeding because they've got no evidence. They need you to confess. If you don't confess, they'll fall back on Section 172, right, failing to tell them who the driver was. Mm-hmm. Okay. Section 172, subsection 4 said, if you cannot reasonably ascertain with diligence who the driver was, then it's not an offence, right? So if they haven't got any evidence that you were involved in the actual offence, right, how can you, with reasonable diligence, ascertain who the driver is? Mm-hmm. Right. So essentially, if you put that in your notice of conditional acceptance, then they've got nowhere to go with it.
Yeah.
But what they'll do next is pretend to take you to court without you being there. So then all you have to do is basically send a statutory declaration to the court saying, I didn't know there was a court case. So that reverses that. So then they'll send you a single justice procedure notice, right? And you just decline that, saying, I can't reasonably tell you who the driver was, as per subsection 4 of Section 172.
Mm-hmm. Zooming out from the detail of that, though, Dave, is that because I always look at this from a sort of this lawful point of view, is that firstly, the public highways belong to we the people, and secondly, who's the victim? If there's been a crime of harm, injury or loss is the test. So who is the victim and what is the crime? And it's actually we own these roads. So that's the thing that I sort of because I've actually asked for a trial by jury. And of course, the trial by jury can ignore any legislation in reaching its verdict, which is the interesting thing. But trying to get a trial by jury is like the holy grail. But
which is why they won't let you have a trial by jury, because if you understand how the system, or how they've tricked you into believing that you're a driver. Right, because it's a big thing,
fish, isn't it? Yeah,
absolutely big thing. If you are allowed to stand in front of a jury and tell them how this whole trick works, right, then that's the game over, right? So they won't let you get in front of a jury and speak about it. Because it's such a money spinner, right?
Yes.
Because public opinion is on their side. Because everybody's been trained to believe that if you go too faster than the number on a placard, then you've done something wrong. Right? That's public opinion. Most people out there believe that they've done something wrong if they go too fast.
Yes.
Yeah. Public opinion's on their side, so they're justified, or they feel justified in doing what they do. Mm. But you're right. No, there's no injured party, right? And there's no contract. Technically there is a contract. Your driving license is a contract.
Yes.
So anything you sign is most likely to be a contract. So you signed your driving license, that's actually a contract to say that you're giving up your natural, and now you've got to follow rules and regulations. If you wanted to go all the way, you'd say that you're not a driver. You'd rescind your driving license, like I have. Say that you're a traveller rather than a driver. If there's no contract, there's no injured party, there's no cause of action. And if anybody says they can come against you, then the only other thing is you must be their slave. In which case, they must come produce a bill of sale for you.
Wow. Gosh. So with you then, do you actually drive without a driving license?
I've never driven.
Oh, right. Okay.
I travel, but I don't drive. I don't drive.
Okay, right. Okay.
Driving is a commercial activity. Yeah, so you have to be employed, right, to transport goods or passengers from place to place for compensation. Right, so a bus driver is a driver, a taxi driver is a driver, right, a lorry driver or a delivery driver. Yeah, but if you get in your car and go to Tesco's, you're not acting in commerce, you're traveling from place to place, which you have a natural right to do. Right? The government have had the mandate to regulate commerce on the roads, because if commerce on the roads was unregulated, it would interfere with our enjoyment of the public road. So they're employed as such to regulate the commerce on the road, right, so that we can still enjoy our use of it. But what they've done is tricked us into believing that we're all drivers, we're all acting in commerce on the road, right? So now they can regulate all of us.
Yes. Yeah. Wow. So if you are stopped and they say, I want to see your driver's license, you say, I'm a traveller.
Am I obliged to have such a thing?
Well, that's the question.
Well, that's the answer. Am I obliged to have such a thing? Or better still, don't answer any questions. I don't answer questions.
Yeah, I mean, this is another huge thing, isn't it? Exercising our right to remain silent, which is a difficult thing to do because the temptation is to want to talk and explain and to justify.
Well, you've been trained. You've been trained to do it at school, right? The authority figure, the teacher, right, has trained you to answer questions. Teacher says, what's the capital of Brazil? Yeah, you have to answer. Right, so you've been trained since school to answer questions from an authority figure. Yes. So yes, that's tricky, and yeah, it's a tricky skill to learn because you have to go against your nature. The other thing you can do is answer questions with questions, just like I did. Yeah, am I obliged to have such a thing? So. If you can do that and answer every question with a question, you're not committing yourself to anything. Yeah, yes. You're not giving any authority away, right? The phrase is asking is as king.
Yes.
Kings don't answer questions; they ask them. Yeah.
Yeah. So whoever's asking the question has the power, essentially.
Has the power. Yes.
Yeah.
Because you give your authority away by answering. If I came up to you on the street and said, where do you live? If you tell me, now I've got the power to ask you and ask you questions and have a reasonable expectation that you'll give me answers.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you answer one of my questions, you're going to be answering all of them.
Oh, it's such a huge subject, isn't it? This whole world, and it's like, to me, it's one of the key pillars, shall we say, that keep the system in place is the justice system, the police, and the fear which they generate through this whole. It's a bit like a pantomime, isn't it? Everyone's wearing their costumes, and like when you go to court, it's like a set, and then you've got them, and they're sitting up higher than you on the bench, and you've got the clerk with his gown on, and the whole thing is like it's almost like a bad ayahuasca journey, actually. A difficult ayahuasca journey. But it seems to me that it's like the last bastion of the control system, because when we have no, let's put it like this, when we have no fear of the police, the justice system, we know our rights, we're able to stand, say, I do not consent, I require a trial by jury, and so on and so forth. That is fundamentally threatening to the establishment, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't know if you've ever seen the film Ant ants like, I can't remember, Bugs Life. Yeah,
Yes.
there's a scene in it with the ant, and the grasshoppers go back to their base, and they're saying, oh yeah, those ants are puny, yeah, we don't have to worry about them. And the guy, the head grasshopper gets a seed and throws a seed at him and goes, did that hurt? That one seed, did that hurt? No, it didn't. And then he pulls the lid off, and all thousands of seeds come and squash them. Right? He says, if you let one ant stand up to us, then they all might stand up to us, and there goes our way of life. Yeah. So they're in perpetual fear that we will wake up collectively from this dream, from this Disneyland, and we'll come against them, and that's it. That's the end of their way of life. Right. So as I said, every aspect of this society is like Disneyland. Right? There's a public face on it, and it appears at first sight to be beneficial to us, but really it's harmful to us.
Yes.
And like the healthcare system looks like it's saving lives and keeping us healthy. The reality is it's killing us slowly,
Yes.
deliberately, and trying to kill us. And that's with everything. The legal system is, on the surface, is there to make the muggles. I'm sorry, the muggle. I call normal people with the muggles. It's there to make the muggles look, believe that the world is being run justly, and if there's any injustice, it'll get sorted out. In the legal system. But as people who end up at the hands of the legal system find out, that's it. It's there to penalize you, right? So yeah, sorry, I've probably gone off topic there.
No, but it is important, because it reminds me of that video that was done by Larkin Rose called The Tiny Dot. Very powerful little animated video about just how huge the dots of the people are, and this tiny dot of the controllers and those who are following orders. I mean, I often, we had this discussion quite a lot in the Love Movement discussions, because we were all going into standing for election, not all of us, but some of us, to kind of challenge the system from the inside, really. But this is one of the discussions we had, is that the tiny dots, or those tiny number of people that are the controllers, shall we say, they need the obedient, the useful idiots who will carry the orders out without questions. So all of those nurses who are giving the jabs, all of these police constables who are told, do this, do that. So if they all woke up and said, we're not going to do this anymore, we're not going to do this to our fellow man, even things like debt collectors, we actually know this is wrong, we're not going to do this anymore. I mean, I remember having a call on behalf of a friend, actually speaking to a debt collection. I don't even call them bailiffs, they're just corporate thugs. And I was speaking on the phone to her, and I just said, you do realise you work for Satan. It's not too late to repent. Repent. Go home, resign and get a job where you're not you're not harming people on a daily basis, And so if everyone turned round and said, do you know what, I'm not going to do this anymore, it would be game over, wouldn't it?
Well, unfortunately, we're all of us are working for the Satan, essentially, because these jobs, why are we doing jobs? Yeah, why are we doing these jobs that we don't like doing? Right? Because it turns out it's all of these jobs that we're doing are compartmentalized little cubicles that we're doing our little job, but we don't see how our little part contributes to the whole system. Right? And that's what we're doing. We're doing jobs that have been arranged for us to work for the system that is working towards our destruction.
Yes.
It's crazy. we're crazy. Why are we doing this?
Well,
Because
it's the trap, isn't it? And that's why they've created so much debt. So it's the dream, isn't it? I had this conversation at Stand in the Park on Sunday about how like we're all programmed to get a good job. Once you get a good job, oh, I'm going to buy a house, I'm going to get a mortgage, and now suddenly, boom, you're a debt slave, and you can't. Oh God, I can't lose my job, so I better comply because God, if I lose my job, because I've got one source of income, and if that goes, that's why I love being an entrepreneur, being an enterprise, because you have multiple revenue streams, and if one client messes you around, then you've got a whole other, possibilities of different ways that you can attract money. So but there's this idea that, oh, you've got to get a proper job, and that's the way to get secure if you get a proper job. But it's the absolute opposite. It's an inversion. It's the most risky thing you can do to just have one, like a business. In business, if you just had one customer,
yeah,
the riskiest thing that you could possibly do is just to have one customer.
The thing is though that we literally just follow the person in front of us. We've done that all our lives. Yeah, we didn't get a job because we really wanted one. It's just that we looked around, everyone's getting a job, so we better get one, and everyone's getting married, everyone's getting a house, everyone's getting a mortgage. Oh, we better do that now. That's the thing. We're all unique beings. Every one of us is unique, right? And if we were allowed to follow our passions, right, we just do what it is we're here to do, right? And it's definitely not a job, and that's what they can't have. That's why they've literally brainwashed us, with school and television and the movies and all that, to want to do this very, as you've summed it up, get good grades at school, get a good job, buy stuff, buy bigger, faster, more meaningless stuff, and keep doing that until you die. That's not what we're here for. It's not what we're here for. I actually gave up working back in 2013. Well, ever since then, I've been helping people for free and realizing that the world doesn't work the way we think it does. We're taught to look at this commercial financial system, right, and say, if you want to do anything, look up here at the commercial financial system, right? Whereas underneath that is the real way the world works. If you have a passion to do something, right, nothing is going to stop you from doing it. In fact, all the barriers, all the obstacles that seem to be there to stop you will just melt away, and before you know it, you're already doing it.
Yeah.
Right. So there is a real way the world works, and this is actually my latest talk. I call it the Adventures in the Fourth Dimension. But you can actually shape the world around you just of your passion and intention. But they don't want you to know that. They want you to rely on their system. Absolutely trapped. You're on railway tracks. Right? There's no way off. And those tracks lead to the grave, and that's it. This world is a playground. Right? It's an amazing playground. It's just that bullies have taken over the playground right now, and yes, it's not very nice because we've forgotten that this is a playground. We've forgotten the tough life that the bullies are meting out to us. No, at any time, and we're doing it all the time anyway. We've got the power to shape this world around us any way that we see fit. Right. The problem is that the bullies, going back to the bullies have brainwashed us. They've poisoned us, right, to forget how to actually use our natural innate power to shape this world. I came across a quote from Rudolf Steiner, and he said, "A way will finally be found to vaccinate bodies so that those bodies will not develop a spiritual awareness, and all their lives people will only believe in the world they they perceive of their senses. So literally, that's one reason for vaccination. Is probably the main reason. It's us off from being able to use this power. In my talk, I say what this power is our access to a different dimension, to the fourth dimension. Very quickly, right? I'll tell you what the dimensions are, how we can understand what the fourth dimension is, right? So imagine I've got a cube. I've got a cube. Right? Imagine I've got this cube right in front of me. Okay. If I cut this cube in half and look down its cross section, now I'm looking at a flat plane, aren't I? Yeah. So if I cut that flat plane in half, look at its cross section, now I'm looking at a line. Yeah. If I cut that line in half, look at its cross section, now I'm looking at a point. Okay. So I've gone from 3 dimensions down to 0 dimensions. Now, if we go back up, right, we can extrapolate what the fourth dimension is. So a line is an infinite number of points all merged together into one thing going off in a direction, right? A flat plane is an infinite number of lines all merged together into one thing going off in a different direction. A cube is a whole infinite number of flat planes all merged together into one thing going off in a different direction. So necessarily the fourth dimension must be, as far as a cube is concerned, an infinite number of cubes all merged together into one thing going off in a totally separate direction. What do you think that direction might be? It's time.
Okay. Because
this spoon didn't just pop into existence, right? At one point, this spoon was something else. You know, it was a rock with some iron ore in it or something, right? And then it went through a whole process to get to being a spoon. And eventually, this spoon is going to break down into something else, right? So the example I give is, imagine a wooden chair. When you interact with that chair, you're interacting with 3D slices of a fourth-dimensional object. And what that fourth-dimensional object looks like is, imagine a flash of light. Maybe it came from the sun. The flash of light gets absorbed by a leaf. That leaf turns that light into wood through photosynthesis as the tree grows, okay? Eventually, that tree gets cut down and is turned into lumber. Somebody has an idea for a chair, right? Turns that lumber into a chair, and we might interact with that chair for 20 years or something. Eventually, that chair gets broken, and it ends up in a landfill where under the ground it breaks down into a liquid, and that liquid might break down into a gas, and that gas might ignite and turn back into a flash of light. Okay. So that fourth dimensional chair is that whole process all merging together into one thing, happening all at once, right? So our whole reality, right? Our whole reality of time and space in the fourth dimension is an object with the whole of time and space happening all at once, all in one place. We live in the third dimension, but through the fourth dimension, we can have access to the whole of time and space happening all at once, all in one place, okay? Because we have 2 hemispheres of the brain, 2 separate hemispheres of the brain. The left hemisphere is what keeps you grounded here in the third dimension. All your senses go to it and say, okay, this is what the present moment looks like, feels like, smells like, tastes like, feels like. Your left brain is constantly looking and scanning and trying to project into the future about what might happen based on things that happened in the past. So it's very linear, step-by-step logical progress, which is what this 3D world is. We experience it moment by moment in only one direction, but we have a right hemisphere of the brain, which isn't rooted here. It's rooted in the fourth dimension. So we exist in 2 dimensions at once, but we can only focus on one at a time. So right now, hopefully you're focused on me and you're hearing my words and you're looking at me and everything. You might be staring up at the ceiling, thinking about what you might want to eat, for instance. even though your eyes are pointed to the ceiling, are you seeing the ceiling? When you're in that imagination state, when you're looking at the ceiling, your eyes aren't seeing. What you're looking at isn't being registered. You're actually looking at something in the fourth dimension. You're creating something in the fourth dimension.
Okay. Yeah.
Your physical senses are subdued, because when you're in that state, somebody in the room might go, Rachel, and you go, oh, what? Sorry, what? Yeah, because your hearing was subdued.
Yeah.
And because your focus is now in the fourth dimension, focused on what you're trying to create there.
Yeah. Interesting.
And whatever you create in the fourth dimension is going to appear here in the third.
So this
eventually.
This is another interesting thing, Dave, about everything that's going on, like especially with like social media and a lot of the content. And I've kind of been thinking a lot about this recently. It's and people like Russell Brand and Tucker Carlson and Donald Trump. It's like their job is to keep us glued, our attention glued into the drama of what's playing out. And every moment we're glued to the drama of what's playing out, or he's wrong, it's da 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 da. We're not actually creating or focusing our energy on creating something different.
You're manifesting what they're trying to get to bring into the world.
Yeah.
Right.
Where focus goes, energy flows is the old phrase, isn't it? So this is the thing. It's I'm seeing it increasingly as a massive distraction ploy to keep us glued into the drama, rather than actually start to co-create a different possibility, a different alternative future reality where we have different ways of doing healthcare. And I mean, I know lots of people are working on this, but that's it. And it's like they're desperately trying to and so the drama's getting, and then you got Trump gets assassinated, and oh, was it the CIA or was it the sniper on the roof, or and it's like they have to keep us hooked into it's like a reality show.
Keep us engaged. Yes, keep us engaged.
Like a reality show, like a Truman Show, where they need us to energize the shit show. Because if we just say, actually, do you know what? I'm just going to create my own thing over here.
Yeah.
That's what they're most worried about.
That's exactly it. That's it. They're making it, trying to make it exciting and interesting as possible, so that we keep our attention and our thoughts and intentions on what they're trying to push, so that we bring in what it is they want. Right. If our attention again wanders to what we want, then that's what's going to happen in the world. I think our world was skewed away from what could have been a utopia. I think that timeline shift happened on September 11th, 2001, when they had that public ritual that virtually everyone in the world saw and was affected by, and our collective thoughts skewed our world into this world. Time isn't as absolute as they've led us to believe. We alter time. We alter time ourselves. I help people with depression sometimes, and I now, before I knew any of this, what I was doing was telling them to realize that it's usually because you've suffered a trauma when you're a child, and when you figure out what that trauma is, you can go through this process of imagining yourself as, let's say, an 8-year-old standing in front of you, saying all the things that oh, I don't feel like, I feel bad, and all this. And you as an adult, right, having an adult perspective, can now tell that child that not to worry, you got it wrong, this is what really happened, and you don't need to feel bad. You see what I'm saying? It's like you're teaching your child self. Well, here's the thing. In that process of you imagining yourself as an 8-year-old, you're actually in the fourth dimension, drilling into that object and connecting to you when you were 8 years old.
Yes.
Right? And you become the voice in that child's head at that time that goes, don't worry, right? It's not your fault. Don't feel like that. And you heal that child as it happens, which heals you in the present.
Yeah,
because
yeah. I'm a
that's
great,
you going back into time.
I'm a great believer in trauma healing, and that happens a lot in medicine, in ayahuasca journeys, where you are literally reprogramming and reshaping the energetic grid, basically healing, transformational healing. I love it. Yeah, wow.
I had ayahuasca once, but I had a totally different experience to anybody else.
What happened to you?
um, I had the stuff, and
Where did
you know, I was.
did you do it in a proper ceremony? Let's just get the setting clear, because that can make a
It was,
big difference.
it was a proper ceremony, but it was in Birmingham, so it's not in a Peruvian jungle or anything.
Okay.
But you know, the guy was South American, and he did the whole ceremony thing, and yeah, I drank the stuff, and you know, immediately threw up more than I thought I had inside me. I felt it coming on. This was 11 o'clock at night. I felt it coming on. I settled back, and all of a sudden it was 6 o'clock in the morning, and I skipped over 6 hours, and you know, and no memory of any time passing. And to this day, I remember absolutely nothing. And Bruno, the guy who was running the thing, said, "No, you were walking around, you were talking to somebody, you were interacting with something." But I have no memory of anything whatsoever. So I don't know.
How long ago was this?
This would have been about 2015, 16, something like that.
Okay, right, yeah. I mean, this is the thing, is that she, the spirit of the medicine, is, regardless of whether you realize it or not, is deeply working through you. So even though you don't remember anything and you think you just sort of missed it all, the impact will have been profound. So it's really interesting that you are on the journey that you're on as a kind of light worker, visionary being. Yeah.
Well, I did get an explanation of why that happened.
Right.
Because the only hallucinogenic drug or anything that works on me is cannabis if I eat it.
Okay.
So I've done it sort of 9 times now. I call them cannabis journeys. In one of these journeys where I had a little bit too much cannabis, it actually it showed me essentially that I can't handle all the information all at once. As it happens, I was being pushed into the 4th dimension. I know that now, but at the time I didn't. I was being pushed into the 4th dimension where I saw the wireframe version of this world. And I thought, this is cool. I was going, yeah, this is great. But then there was another part of me that went, no, if you go, you're not going to come back. And it threw me out of the trip. I went back in again, and it threw me out straight away. And then the third time I went in, I was now in a conference room, as it were. And there was all these aspects of me sitting around this conference table and the cannabis, and they were all discussing me. And I was like a little child running around the edge of the table going, but I want to see. And they were ignoring me. And they were discussing, okay, he can't take all this information all at once. What are we going to do? And they all decided, okay, we're just going to give him bite-sized chunks. And when he's absorbed, then we'll give him the next chunk, and so on. And then I was thrown out, and that was it. And I think I've been getting bite-sized chunks ever since. But I think the ayahuasca experience was too much, and it felt like I was being protected from everything I experienced, and the cannabis journey was just started to give me bits and pieces.
Wow. So Dave, just to finish then, let's just quickly touch upon the subject of God and faith, because I read in your little bio that you were an atheist, and now you've had an awakening.
So yeah, I was an atheist for 40 years. I've never been to church, never been to Sunday school, never had any exposure to religion in the slightest, because my mum said that she basically didn't want to force religion on her children, let them find their own way. During this process of truth seeking, I was led to read the Bible for the first time. So I read it through 3 times.
You're talking about the Old and the New Testament.
I read both of them, Old and New, front to back. What I realized was it's a story. It's a full-on story, and it hasn't finished yet. And the New Testament, and this will be unpopular, the New Testament doesn't fit. It's obviously not part of the Old Testament, or not even connected to the Old Testament. It's like you've got a story emerging, and then there's a hard stop, and then it's like, forget about all this. It's about this guy now. Yeah.
Okay.
So then I decided, because of the richness of the Old Testament, I decided to research the Old Testament, and literally, as I started researching, all this information came to me, and I started restoring some of the old books they took out, and the story is absolutely amazing. It's not a story you're going to get from the Christian viewpoint. It's an amazing story. It's like a science fiction story, and it tells you that an alien invasion happened thousands of years ago, and the aliens are still here. And they hate humans.
Are you talking about the Anunnaki?
Kind of. The Anunnaki are the fallen angels of the Old Testament. Okay.
Right, okay.
They're also all the old gods. So the Greek gods, the Roman gods, the Hindu gods, the Egyptian gods. They're the same characters,
Right.
just with different names, slightly changed stories, same characters. But yes, these fallen angels started a different seed line from the human seed line. They literally, their job, or their task, is to exterminate humanity.
Wow.
And these they're called Nephilim. These Nephilim are the ones who are in charge of this world today. So just as in the Old Testament, you've got the 12 or 13 tribes of Israel.
Yeah.
Right? You've also got the 12 or 13 bloodlines of the Illuminati. Yeah, so it's equal and opposite, and they're the ones who are battling it out for control of this world.
Wow. So who's winning, Dave?
Well, the Most High wins, because that's the story of the Old Testament. The Old Testament tells you at the end, they lose. And it tells you exactly how they lose, right? And so yeah, the Most High wins, and these characters never had a chance from the beginning. It's written in the book what happens to them. It's just that they've been led to believe they've got a chance at winning. The New Testament, it has many uses, but one of the fundamental uses is it's a coded playbook. It's like a roadmap for what they want to have happen, written by this bloodline for their descendants in these days.
Right.
So, an example is, it says in Revelations, "By thy sorceries shall the whole world be deceived."
Okay.
Right. Well, if you look up the word sorceries, it's actually the word pharmakia.
Ah.
Right. So, by thy pharmakia, by thy pharmaceuticals, shall the whole world be deceived. Do you think that might be what happened just recently?
Yeah. Oh, interesting. So what is the last book of the Old Testament? Is that Ezekiel?
No, actually, there's actually 14 extra books that were taken out of the Old Testament.
Right.
They appeared in the King James 1611 Bible, but the subsequent versions took them out. Okay, and they had books like the rest of Esther. So you got the book of Esther, but in the Apocrypha, that's what it's called, and it means hidden. In the Apocrypha, it's got the rest of Esther. So there's a whole chunk of Esther that was taken out and hidden. Third and fourth book of Ezra, which is called First and Second Esdras, in the Apocrypha. And again, some of these books tell you what the end days that we're currently living in, tells you what they look like, what's going to happen in them.
Are you doing any talks about this that people can come and let's wrap up here today? But I'd love to kind of put, feel free to kind of promote anything or suggest how people can get in touch with you. Maybe hear a bit more about this, follow you.
Unfortunately, my website's gone down for a little while. I'm gonna have to rebuild it. So, but my YouTube channel is, and it's not just YouTube, BitChute, Odyssey, and Rumble. If you do just put in at allegedly Dave, you'll find my stuff. My email address is dmurphy25@gmail.com. So if anyone wants to get in touch with me, and I've got a Telegram group called Ask Allegedly Dave. So if you've got any questions on pretty much any subject, but it's mainly common law, you can just jump into that group, and
Nice.
you'll likely get all your answers answered or questions answered.
Cool. And are there videos about this religious aspect? Because it sounds fascinating.
I've got a couple of videos about it. I do talks around the country. I do like a tour, and literally the tour came to an end a couple of days ago. But I'll probably do another one next year. And I literally do whatever talk people want me to give. And I've got about 3 talks about what's really going on in the Bible, and what the story actually is, and some quite fascinating ones that encompass things like what Adolf Hitler was doing, and what Ukraine is all about, from a biblical perspective.
Wow.
Uncovered some amazing things.
Thank you so much for agreeing to come on and chat with me. It's been really interesting, and thank you for your practical advice around my little incident. It was really helpful to receive your message, so I really appreciate that. So lots of love to you, and yeah, we'll speak to you soon. Okay.